Overwatch 2 Season 2 is finally here, and we are seeing a lot of interesting balance changes and an ever-rare Doomfist meta. Okay, maybe he won't exactly be meta, it's hard to tell right now. Roadhog is still going to be some stiff competition for him, but regardless, I can tell you without a doubt that this buff is going to be huge for Doomfist. It is absolutely going to bump him far up in our power rankings, and he is definitely going to be one of the standout tanks this season. Christmas time is here, and Santa has left in your stocking an easy and quick way to get to GM. There has never been a better time to get your membership to GameLeap.com. You can use code SANTA at checkout and get 50% off. Not only that, not only will you get access to everything, but 10 people will be picked for a free VOD review from our top coaches. That is an insane amount of value, so hurry up and click on the link right now and get your membership today. Alright, so getting right into the changes, we have first a control map change, which says whenever a point is captured on control, the team losing control of the point is counted as having contested it for overtime. So some of you may have noticed in control right now, if a team has 99% and they take control of the point, it instantly ends the round. There is no chance for the other team to contest unless they are standing actively on the point when it happens. This has definitely been seeing some complaints from the community as it's very different from how it used to work, but it's been kind of overshadowed by some of the other things that people have had to complain about. The other important non-hero balance changes that are coming to competitive include, quote, changes to matchmaking to improve match quality. They have talked a little bit about this and mentioned that they are trying to pair people of more equal skill levels together, as there's been a lot of complaints about people being in GM and getting people who are in gold on their team. This ends up not being fun for the gold player, and it ends up not being fun for the GM player either, so it just creates a really bad competitive environment. They also mentioned that they're going to be improving the UI for competitive, but the biggest thing is that Ramattra will be unavailable in competitive for 2 weeks. This is completely identical to what they did for Kiriko as well in Season 1, and it honestly worked out pretty well because people had time to play and learn the hero before they went into competitive and immediately started picking her. However, I get the feeling that the only reason people are going to be picking Ramattra is because he's a new character, and let's get into what these balance changes are so that I can explain why. Starting us off very strong with these balance changes is going to be Doomfist. Those of us who have been keeping up with the channel will know just how much we've talked about how bad Doomfist is and the fact that players will get harassed just for picking him. He has been nothing short of the worst tank in the game. Even though the best Doomfist can make him work, for the most part he has a super high ceiling with an extremely high floor to match. And even playing with the best Doomfist in the game, you still are just like, well, you know, if we had a hog, the same thing would have happened really. So getting it started, Rocket Punch has seen some changes. The impact damage range, meaning the first initial contact between Doomfist and the player, has been increased to deal more damage. Now it does 25 to 50. And the wall slam, which is the second part of the punch where they hit a wall and take extra damage and get stunned, that damage range has also been decreased to 10 to 30. The idea with this is to make his punch deal a little bit more consistent damage, since a lot of the time you're going to be punching someone who is not next to a wall, so having the bulk of the damage be from the initial impact kind of helps that. Furthermore, the empowered version of his rocket punch has had its stun duration reduced to 0.25 seconds to 0.75 seconds. However, this is a big buff for Doomfist. His unempowered rocket punch, so just the normal one, will stun as well for 0.25 seconds on wall slam. This means that even though the stun is boosted with empowered rocket punch and it has been nerfed in this patch, the fact that he doesn't need it anymore in order to get stuns off is huge. They've also made the minimum time to cancel it now set to 0.12 seconds, and the cooldown has been reduced to 3 seconds. With the reduced cooldown, of course, he's going to get the more consistent punch going, with his damage range being increased on the impact and it having stun when it's not empowered, that kind of stuff. But the big thing is that this cooldown reduction is going to make him much more mobile. Doomfist's primary source of mobility comes from his punch and being able to cancel it with your jump key to sort of double the range that you go. So having this reduction in cooldown is essentially like a 25% mobility buff. They've also reduced the cooldown on his power blot to 7 seconds, increased its duration to 2.5 seconds, and they reduced the needed minimum damage to empower your rocket punch to 80. Of course, this ability has been pretty bad for Doomfist, not really getting much value, so the reduction in cooldown, the duration increase, and the fact that it doesn't need as much damage to charge this fist is going to be pretty huge. Doomfist's Meteor Strike has also been buffed. It now empowers your rocket punch on landing, meaning as soon as you drop, you now have a really potent ability to use. The slow duration on enemies who have been affected by Meteor Strike or damaged by it has also been increased to 3 seconds. And finally, his passive, which gives him health whenever he damages with abilities, has also been buffed. The max temporary HP has been increased to 200, and the temporary health gained per target hit with an ability has been increased to 40. This honestly feels like a little bit of an overtuning for Doomfist. Like, yes, he was very bad, but you have given him more consistency and increased his playmaking potential significantly with these changes. Sadly, I don't know if it's going to be enough to actually beat Roadhog, who did not get any changes this patch, but it's very safe to say that it's going to be a Doom versus Roadhog meta situation where they're clashing to see who gets higher on the power ranking. Roadhog obviously for his pick potential and more. He did not get any changes this patch, so he's still going to be an extremely strong pick on tank, and Doomfist because he has just been buffed to an insane degree. He has tons of mobility, he has much more consistency with his punches, including a stun for unempowered punches, and is overall just a much better tank than he was going into this season. Drunker Queen receives some changes, but she's still pretty trash. Her torso and head hit volume size has been increased by 12%, making her an easier target. Her Rampage has had its duration for the wound reduced from 5 to 4.5 seconds, and its cost reduced by 10%. This of course means you can charge it faster, but the duration on its effect is much less. Her commanding shout cooldown was reduced from 15 to 14 seconds, and her passive healing multiplier has increased from 1 to 1.25 times your damage dealt. Bastion is also receiving some much needed changes, especially to his ultimate. The Blizzard developers actually said that watching the bug which gave him unlimited shots in his ultimate and not kill anybody was a pretty clear indicator that he needed buffs to his ult. And as such, they have reduced the delay before the projectiles actually fall to the ground, so you know, when that circle appears versus when it actually deals damage, that has been reduced from 1 to 0.6 seconds. The damage that they deal has been reduced from 300 to 250. He no longer deals explosion damage to himself, and the minimum delay between his shots has been reduced by 20%, meaning it essentially has a faster fire rate. And finally, they also reduced the cooldown on his reconfigure from 12 to 10 seconds, which is a nice little buff as well. Perhaps the most important changes in this patch are going to be the Sojourn nerfs. These are fascinating. There are a lot of changes and they all involve her gun. Starting us off, perhaps the most requested change for her is that her railgun's energy delay has been reduced from 8 to 5 seconds. Her secondary fire damage fall off range has been reduced from 70 to 40 meters. Her secondary fire critical damage multiplier has been reduced from 2 to 1.5, meaning her headshots will deal less damage. Her secondary fire damage will now also scale linearly with energy from 30 to 130 damage to make it easier for people to process, meaning that 1 damage is 1 energy. In an attempt to make her perform better at lower SRs as well, her primary fire damage has been increased from 9 to 10, and finally her overclock energy charge rate has been increased by 20%, making her ult a little bit more powerful. Now I will say that this is perhaps a little bit of an over adjustment, an overcorrection if you will. I think she's been nerfed too hard, but I am very happy to see that, you know, we won't be having Sojourn every game at least. Our next buff comes to Symmetra, who has had her beam charge rate and decay rate increased by 20%. Her primary ammo consumption rate has increased from 7 to 10 per second, and her primary fire gains ammo from damaging barriers again, like it did in Overwatch 1. I think these changes will be nice, but probably not enough to make Symmetra really go that far up in the tier list. And our final change comes to Tracer, where they have increased her pulse pistol's damage from 5 to 6, and this is really just because they fixed the no fall off bug that she's been having for the past few patches. Moving on into the support changes, we start off with Ana, who has had a reduction in her sleep dart cooldown from 15 to 14 seconds. Hopefully this comes in handy for Ana mains having to deal with Doomfist more often now. They've also had some changes to Kiriko, who has had the width of her arm hitbox reduced by 15%, and this may be a very strange sort of change when you first look at it. However, this change was made because her arms would actually block her headshot hitbox depending on where you were looking at her. They have also increased the cost of her Kitsune Rush, which is her ultimate, by 10%. They've reduced the movement speed buff it gives from 50% to 30%, and they reduced the cooldown rate multiplier from 3 to 2 times faster. These are some very needed nerfs to her ultimate, which was easily the best ultimate in the game for most of Season 1. Her Suzu cast time has been reduced from 0.15 to 0.1 seconds, which is going to make it a little bit better. Her kunai ammo has been increased from 12 to 15, meaning she needs to reload less, which is always nice. And finally, her swift step can actually now be held down in order to activate whenever you're trying to find a target. The final balance change for heroes came to Mercy, where her weapon swap time was reduced and her ammo and her blaster was increased from 20 to 25. If I'm being honest, this seems extremely random. I don't really know why she needs this or if it even really does anything. They've also released the map pools, which include New Queen Street, Colosseo, and Esperanza for push. For hybrid, they have Blizzard World with an overcast atmosphere, so it's nice and rainy. They have Eichenwald, Kings Row, Midtown, and Paraiso. For Escort, we're going to have Dorado, Junkertown, Circuit Royale, Rialto, Route 66, and Shambali, which is the new map. For Control, we are going to have Busan, Ilios, Lijiang Tower, Nepal, which now has evening lighting, and Oasis, which now has morning lighting. The final noteworthy changes from this patch are that on Coliseo and Esperanza, they have fixed part of the maps where people could contest payloads while being undetected, as in they could sit in a rock. And on, it says Rio, but I assume that means Paris, so there was a bug that allowed players to get inside of the payload to contest it, and they have since fixed that. In any case, that is all of the patch notes and what they mean going into Season 2. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more updates and more news and educational content. Christmas time is here, and Santa has left in your stocking an easy and quick way to get to GM. There has never been a better time to get your membership to GameLeap.com. You can use code SANTA at checkout and get 50% off. Not only that, not only will you get access to everything, but 10 people will be picked for a free VOD review from our top coaches. That is an insane amount of value, so hurry up and click on the link right now and get your membership today.